Hey, in this lesson, we're gonna learn how to do the half roundhouse kick. So a half roundhouse kick is basically just like a round knee. The reason I call it a half roundhouse kick is because it's the building blocks to being able to do a full roundhouse kick. The main focus for me on this is pivoting the base leg. So whenever I'm doing this, my goal with a half roundhouse kick is to pivot my toes 180 degrees so that they're pointed behind me, right? That's the main goal of this for me. Now, when you're pivoting, make sure that you're pivoting on the ball of the foot. Do not pivot on the heel. If you pivot on the heel, a few things can happen. One, your weight, if it's backwards, you have nothing to fall back on to stop you from falling down. If I rotate on the ball of my foot, I can drop my heel down, and that's kind of like a little kickstand to help keep me up for a little bit longer. Another thing, if I'm pivoting here and say there's a rock or something and it gets caught and I'm twisting my body really hard, I'm more likely to injure my knee, and I don't want to do that either. So that's a few of the reasons why we rotate on the ball of the foot. It's also just going to be a little bit easier of a rotation for us as well, and ability to have more power behind it. So we're going to raise our knee up, or start by raising our knee up, and then I'm going to turn my hip over, and that's what causes this rotation here. So I'm raising my knee up, and then as I flip my hips over, I rotate. Now, some of the time you'll kind of feel like you have to almost throw your weight up into the air so that there's less friction, and that's fine. You can do that as well if you need to. Again, that's the key. Now, if we focus on the kicking leg, even though we're not actually kicking at this point, it comes up, goes around, and then what I want to try to do is have this relatively horizontal. I don't want to angle it downwards. I can angle it slightly upwards, but at a certain point, it basically just becomes a front kick at that point, and so I don't want to do that either. So I want to try to go horizontal or up maybe about 30 degrees from that horizontal line. So horizontal or up, angled up about 30 degrees. Either one of those is fine. One of the things I want you to try to avoid doing at this stage, you can do it later on, there's times when you will do this, but I want you to try to avoid what I call the L shape. So the L shape is this. So you can see my knee, my hip, and my shoulder create this L, or that right angle here, all right? I want you to try to avoid doing that. And again, the way that you do that is by having more rotation. The L shape usually shows up because you have 90 or less rotation. Now, when you're doing a roundhouse kick, you need to have 90 degrees or more pivots. Don't pivot less than 90 degrees, 90 or more. So even though that wasn't a complete 180, it was still over 90, so that's acceptable. Because this is a training tool, I do want you to strive for 180 degrees every time. Again, it's a training tool. We're developing attributes so that we can have better kicks later on. So raise the knee up, rotate as you pivot. You can try to focus on keeping your hands up if you'd like. Go horizontal with this, and then avoid this sort of an L shape here. And then when you're ready, counter rotate or counter pivot, and then bring it back. At first, if you need to, you can just pivot and set it down in front, pivot and set it down in front. But after you've done that a few times, I want you to work on the counter rotation or the counter pivot. So one, and then bring it back, rotating so the toes, again, are facing back to the front. Again, this is another way to develop attributes so that we can have better kicks later on. It's not quite necessary. If I was just going to impact somebody with a round knee, it's not quite necessary that I rotate or counter rotate backwards. So be aware that it's a training tool and we're trying to develop the attributes so that we can have better kicks later on.